What's up, ladies and gents? Welcome to Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 22 to be perfectly precise. I'm your host, Billy Donnelly, who you can find at JoeBlow.com. This is Infamous, and of course, right here at Just the Worst Podcast. Pretty busy week, couple of really big news items in the movie industry to kind of get through and tackle. In addition to sort of the aftermath of the Super Bowl and some of the spots that we saw there, as far as the bigger movies that bought ad placement during the big game. So lots of stuff to get into this week. A number of huge things, including one pretty big item that dropped just before we fired up the mics here for this particular episode. So let's not waste a moment and let's get right into everything that's going on. And we're going to start, for once, away from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, away from the DC Cinematic Universe, away from Star Wars. Granted, it's still a shared universe, but we're going to go into something else. And this goes over to Universal Studios, or Universal Pictures, rather, and their reboot, restart, rebirth of the classic Monsterverse that Universal is really all in on, considering that they don't have a shared collective universe anywhere else for any other major properties outside of this. Really, when it comes to Universal, and it's amazing because they had a banner year last year, I believe it was, when you look at the Minions movie and Jurassic World and Furious 7. So, I mean, they have done remarkably well for a studio that isn't built on franchises. You know, Straight Outta Compton, which did really well for them, not a franchise. So they had a lot of really good, solid, middle-of-the-road pictures that did remarkably well for them at the box office and sent them off to a banner year, but they weren't just built upon franchises upon franchises upon franchises like some of the other studios have. So granted, you know, there are a couple within there, but not a ton. And right now, their biggest franchise, other than Jurassic World, which was a one-off that now is becoming another thing, sort of returning the Jurassic Park franchise to glory, is the Fast and the Furious. That's really the only thing they have going for them regularly, is the Fast and Furious movies, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. But beyond that, Despicable Me is one for them on the family side, but they don't have these monumental properties that some of the other studios have. You know, they're not like Warner Brothers, who has the DC Cinematic Universe to build upon. They're not like Disney, who have Pixar and Star Wars and Marvel. In order to sort of really change the game for them, they have to get a little bit more creative. But they do understand the value of having sort of a brand diverse, and as a result, they're going and bringing back their classic monsters. And look, they are going for broke. They're going big or they're going home on this thing. And if you look at some of the other things that have already been in the works, the first one, which will kick things off, following Dracula Untold, which did okay, but didn't really set the world on fire. I mean, Dracula Untold is sort of the official start of things, but it's the start of things that didn't really start too much because not a lot of people went out and saw it. So moving forward, they're hoping to keep the train rolling with some more of their classic monsters, and as a result, shifting gears a little bit from where Dracula Untold went, which they thought the Dracula lore, the Dracula mythology would be able to carry them forth. No, they are going for star power to get some of their other films off the ground. Now, they already have Tom Cruise locked in for The Mummy. Whatever the reboot of The Mummy is going to be set up, with Sofia Boutella supposedly playing the title character as a female mummy. And I believe Tom Cruise playing a Navy SEAL or military guy. We'll get more details as that goes. That script has sort of fluctuated a little bit as they've tried to get it ready for production. And then there's also the word that they continue to try to do something with Bride of Frankenstein in trying to lure Angelina Jolie to not only star in the film, but also to direct it. So they're going for broke with these two pictures in hopes of getting top-notch A-list talent to be able to sell their films on. And this week, we got news that that isn't changing as they continue to get deeper in sort of building their classic monsterverse. Johnny Depp will now be slotting in as the Invisible Man. You know, the Invisible Man, going back many years, was set up to be Claude Rains, who was a scientist, a chemist, I believe, who, of course, things go awry and becomes invisible, which leads to all sorts of emotions he must tackle as a result, and the man becomes a monster. And look, we can look at Johnny Depp's history in recent years and say, I don't like these films all that much. But guess what? If you look at the box office performance of a Johnny Depp film, it doesn't matter that you may say they're not as good as they used to be. The fact is they're making more money than the films that we used to like him to do. So as a result, Johnny Depp has a pretty strong place in Hollywood right now. It doesn't matter if you don't like the movies that he's making. Somebody's liking them because they're going to see them in big numbers. And as a result, people keep coming back to Johnny Depp and trying to get him into their movie. Now, Johnny Depp is still a name. Johnny Depp is still a star. So for Universal to try and hitch their wagon to Johnny Depp for The Invisible Man makes perfect sense. Because Johnny Depp is a bankable talent to try and get something like The Invisible Man off the ground. Because when you hear that Johnny Depp is in The Invisible Man, you at least look at it and go, I think I might want to go see that. Or at least, I'm curious to perhaps check that out. And that is what Universal is banking on. Universal wants you to have that curiosity, to pique that interest inside of you, to go and watch Johnny Depp in a monster movie. Hell, I saw the headline come before me, and I said to myself, that's interesting. I would totally see that. And it doesn't matter that 3 of the 4 Pirates of the Caribbean movies aren't very good. It doesn't matter that I don't like Alice in Wonderland, and Alice Through the Looking Glass doesn't look that much better. It doesn't matter that I thought The Tourist was a complete and total piece of shit. Johnny Depp is still capable of doing some fantastic work when the material rises up to the level of what Johnny Depp is capable of. Now, will the Invisible Man be on that level? I don't know. We still got years and years to get there. With the Invisible Man, I believe, looking to come in at least 3rd in the process. I'm not sure how The Bride of Frankenstein comes in 2nd. I would think that Frankenstein would have to come before Bride of Frankenstein. I mean, it only makes logical sense to me is that the bride of the character happens after the character that she's supposedly marrying is established. It's like going to a wedding and just not knowing who's involved. Who's she marrying again? Oh, that guy. Nah, I don't know too much about him. So we'll see how this MonsterVerse continues to develop, but Universal is coming out guns a-blazing here. They're not relying on recognition of the monsters to carry them. they're using that in tandem with just getting big names that drive box office that can help get these individual franchises off the ground to help lift a greater shared universe. Which is really smart. And I commend Universal for this. Because how could you not? How can you not look at this and say, man, these are some ballsy decisions they're going on. I mean, they're throwing a lot of money at it to make it happen. Because I promise you, Tom Cruise, Angelina Jolie, Johnny Depp, they don't come cheap. So, look, I wish them all the best in getting this thing off the ground and making it work, because the Universal's classic MonsterVerse would be pretty cool. Especially if they're good movies. I mean, I don't want just a Universal classic MonsterVerse to exist just to exist. I can go back and watch the originals, go back to the classics, and see that. But there's a reason that these films are regarded as classics. I think there is a place for them in a modern day cinema. It'll be interesting to see how they're able to take these particular characters and sort of morph them to fit modern day horror sensibilities. If you remember going back to sort of the Brendan Fraser mummy films, they weren't really horror. They were much more adventure, action adventure sort of films, sort of more in line with an Indiana Jones than going back towards a classic horror movie. And granted, classic horror movies are much different than how horror movies have been viewed over the last, say, 30 to 40 years. So it'll be interesting to see how they're changed in order for modern audiences to look at them with terror and fright. But I think they have a really good blueprint right now that they're laying out. I think they have a really solid starting point to go forth with. The thing that I am really curious about is, who are they going to get to play the creature from the Black Lagoon? What talent are they going to get to put that suit on? That's what I'm really interested in right there. But Johnny Depp as the Invisible Man, you have my attention, Universal. Keep it there. Because it's all going to start with the Mummy. Once again, much like we're finding out with Warner Brothers and their DC setup, is everything is resting on the first film. Well, Man of Steel started off the DC Cinematic Universe, but everything really moving forward at this point is going to be built upon Batman v Superman. And here, moving forth with Universal's classic MonsterVerse, everything is going to be built upon the Mummy, which will be the first out of the gate. So they need to really hit that one home in order for Bride of Frankenstein and the Invisible Man to matter. Because if not, and you continue to sort of connect all these films as being part of the shared universe, people aren't going to care. They're going to really start to just check out and say, it doesn't matter. The shared universe doesn't really do anything for me. So good luck to them. They're off to a good start. I'm interested, and I'll continue to keep an eye on it. But right now, Tom Cruise, possibly Angelina Jolie, and Johnny Depp as your trifecta to get the Universal Classic MonsterVerse off the ground. It's a pretty solid trio to get things started. All right, so this past weekend was Super Bowl 50, which for anyone who watched the actual game, I'm truly sorry. Just not a very exciting football game to watch. Sort of dull along the way, and you know, you try to at least hold on to the commercials, as in previous years. Often the commercials can be enough to sort of justify watching the Super Bowl. Now, look, I'm a Super Bowl fan. I'm a football fan. I've sort of a complicated relationship with football right now, but I'm not going to not watch the Super Bowl. But I found in recent years that the commercials, the TV spots, have not been as exceptional as the reputation of Super Bowl spots has been in the past. I just feel like it's sort of on a downswing. There's been peaks before now where I think in the Super Bowl commercial valley. So for me, one of the things that I continue to keep an eye on, in addition to hoping that we get some sort of breakout, really cool Super Bowl commercial to talk about for the weeks and weeks that we go on, is what do the movie spots look like? What studios bought time for their big movies to try and break through and grab some awareness for some of the bigger films that they have on the horizon? And ultimately, how do they play? You know, what was it a waste of money, considering that I think a 30-second Super Bowl spot is at this point somewhere in the neighborhood of about $5 million, considering how many people watch the Super Bowl. And so when I looked through the Super Bowl commercials as they were coming up, there were a couple that we knew were on the way. A Jason Bourne trailer, or Jason Bourne spot was going to be in the mix. There was going to be Captain America Civil War. 20th Century Fox had some things along the way. A couple of things here and there. So I kept my eye out to see what do these films look like? How are they going to play? How are they going to go out of their way to try and connect with the large Super Bowl audience, so that when it comes time for these films to be released, people are already in tune with what they are, and they're excited about them. They date back to the Super Bowl and go, damn, remember that thing we saw during the Super Bowl that already sold me on buying a ticket? Well, now I'm super psyched. So I watched the Super Bowl, and I kept an eye out for some of the trailers. And look, here's the thing about the Super Bowl and the trailers, or the TV spots, you know, really mini trailers, I guess, condensed trailers in a number of ways, is that most of them drop on the line before the actual Super Bowl game. And some of them will drop immediately after, but the process at this point is that you don't even necessarily have to be a part of the Super Bowl to sort of gain that traction, because of the fact that, look, everything's online. You can go and watch a TV spot or a trailer on YouTube with the quickness. You don't need to see it on your TV. The way we consume media digitally now has sort of changed the game, because we don't need to see everything physically in front of us on our television set. We can track it down mobily in a number of ways. So when I watch these spots and these trailers to see what are out there, you know, once again, you don't have to go back. You don't have to watch the Super Bowl to see a lot of these. If you had missed the Super Bowl, let's say you just overslept for like the whole day, and you were like, oh shit, I forgot to DVR it too. What did I miss? You can just go online and get caught up. So there were a couple that sort of stood out to me. And there were a few that just didn't. They just kind of came and went. But there were a couple that stood out to me that I figured I would point out here on the show today. Now, number one was, of course, the aforementioned Jason Bourne trailer, or Jason Bourne spot. And that's primarily because of the fact that this is really the first look that we got at the new Jason Bourne movie, which has Matt Damon once again returning to the Bourne franchise with Paul Greengrass directing. Now, as far as exciting you, I didn't think that the trailer or the spot did all that much, other than the fact that it basically just announced, hey, we got another Jason Bourne movie coming. This one does not have Jeremy Renner. It doesn't have any goddamn chems. This is Bourne as you know Bourne. Only now he seems to be in sort of an underground fight club. So the main thing that I took away from it was, oh, okay, we're just calling it Jason Bourne now. But beyond that, didn't really do much for me, which is a shame because that was the first impression that we have gotten of this new film, and it kind of just came and went. A little bit underwhelming. I also found the Captain America Civil War TV spot to be a little bit underwhelming. Look, I know May is going to be here before we know it, and we've seen some cool things, and they're trying to hold back plenty of coolness. And look, a Marvel movie doesn't even need to sell itself all that much. It just has to say, hey, here's a Captain America movie, go see it. And people will. So it doesn't need to really unleash any of its coolness. I know people were like, I hope we get to see Spider-Man. You're probably not going to get to see Spider-Man until the movie actually comes out. I would hope. I hope that's one thing they keep in their pocket. And there's a cool tandem of shots between the sort of the two squads, the divide of the superheroes into their respective teams, I guess. But beyond that, the trailers, I think, have done a little bit more to sort of hit some of this home. But once again, Marvel doesn't really have to sell Captain America Civil War too heavily anyway. I think we're deep enough in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for people who are going to go. Look, they're just going to go. And if the Marvel movies aren't your thing, well, this isn't really going to convince you otherwise. I think when it comes to that, the Civil War has been, the lines of the Civil War have been drawn. People who are going to go see a Marvel movie and people who aren't. And all of these trailers and TV spots really do is say, hey, there's another one coming out, in order for those sides to once again sort of head off in their own directions where they're going to go. The Jungle Book, I thought, had sort of a cool TV spot, even though it was very confusing. I couldn't tell if it was trying to be in 3D or it was trying to say that it was bigger than your TV. Either way, the main point of it was to push you to go online to then watch the full trailer. Which I thought, look, granted, Disney can do that. They can throw like $5 million out and it's not a big deal. It's a drop in the bucket over at the mouse. But I just thought, what a waste of money to push people away from their TV online to watch the trailer in full. At that point, spend $16 million, play the full trailer on the TV in like a whole just 2-minute TV commercial block during the Super Bowl and blow people away with what you got. Jungle Book trailer, by the way, really fantastic. So, other than that, Independence Day Resurgence had a trailer that I thought was alright. It gave us a little bit more of what the aliens are capable of this time, which previously it seemed they had been hiding in their early teasers. And granted, when you look at the first Independence Day, that used the Super Bowl to really catapult it towards mega movie status. Blowing up the White House on TV during the Super Bowl. Genius marketing. Just an iconic moment that people can still close their eyes and sort of recall if you've seen Independence Day. Independence Day Resurgence now has gone forth and sort of showed the destruction and the level and the scope of it in their Super Bowl TV spot trailer, but it sort of looks almost like every other movie that we see right now that wants to destroy the world. Sort of right in that destruction porn genre that we now have existing in Hollywood as far as the big budget movies are concerned, where they're just like, let's just pick a city, and it's usually in New York. Something iconic. So we could just fuck it up with our special effects team. Our visual effects team. Let's just destroy the shit out of it. They use Vegas sometimes. LA sometimes. Paris is a big one because the Eiffel Tower is there. People have done London in the past. It can all be done. But that's the problem, is that it has all been done. So when we see another one, it looks kind of samey. As a fan, as a not fan of the original Independence Day, there are parts of it that I really like, parts of it plenty that I do not. There, for me, was nothing about Independence Day resurgence and its presence during the Super Bowl that really blew me away and was like, oh man, Independence Day is back. Or, oh, this is going to be better than the last one. That's pretty stupid. So, look, you look at the commercials. To me, the best film-related commercial I thought that we had, which once again sort of went back to Marvel, was a Coke commercial that had the Hulk and Ant-Man battling over a can of Coca-Cola. That, to me, was creative. That, to me, was different. That, to me, is something that grabbed my attention. And I said, huh? And look, we don't have another Avengers movie coming for another few years. Ant-Man and Wasp, I think, is 2018. Avengers Infinity War Part 1 is 2019. If I have my dates correct. Which I may not, because after a while, all those films start to blend together as far as when they're coming out. But I thought that was at least good use of those characters in a creative way to draw attention to what they were doing. Which was at that point selling both Coke and Marvel at the exact same time. So sort of a disappointing run for Hollywood studios and their movie TV spots during this year's Super Bowl. I didn't really find anything that I looked at and said, man, I gotta go see that. But it is what it is. Alright, I did say I was going to talk about the Fast and Furious franchise during the course of the show, so now seems like a perfect time, as good as any, to sort of dip into that. Fast 8 is going to be the next film on the docket, with F. Gary Gray taking over directorial duties, Chris Morgan once again writing and producing. And it looks like they have an idea for what they want to do moving forward, at least sort of setting things up for, I guess, what they're hoping is a new trilogy. So 8, 9, and 10 are going to sort of be tied together as they get towards Fast and Furious 10 or X or whatever the fuck they're going to call us. Now, Jason Statham is still alive and well in this world. Granted, he's in like deep incarceration. But I do not believe that we have seen the last of Jason Statham in a Fast and Furious movie. If that guy's not dead, that character's not dead, he's coming back. Because you don't just shelve Jason Statham and then do nothing with him. So I guarantee you, he's coming back. But the idea moving forward for Fast 8 is to develop a female villain. Which would be something much different than anything we've seen before in the Fast and Furious films. So F. Gary Gray and Chris Morgan are developing something with an eye on Charlize Theron stepping in and taking the role. which has me super psyched. Charlize Theron as a villain in just about anything I would watch. Especially right now. I mean, of course, this is coming off the strength of her playing Furiosa in Mad Max Fury Road and giving a really, really strong female character for viewers to just grab hold of. But now you put a villainous spin on that? And have Charlize Theron as sort of this no-nonsense, badass, ruthless bad guy or bad girl? You know, bad girl has a weird connotation to it, but just bad person? I'm with you. I'm with you on that in a number of ways. And I'd really like to see her sort of sink her teeth into sort of the over-the-top nature that a Fast and Furious movie would allow her to have for a role like that. Doesn't have to be too grounded. Doesn't have to be too realistic. Charlize Theron can be bad to the bone. Deliciously bad when it comes to a Fast and Furious movie. Now look, the brunt of a villain in a film like this is allowing the villain to have enough to make them matter over the course of the film, not to have them sort of just be a placeholder for the good guys, for Dom and his crew to sort of battle against the odds to defeat. Because what winds up happening a lot of the times is the villain is sort of there. They're a little bit undercooked, a little bit underbaked, because the film focuses so much on the hero's journey. It's really hard to have a split film that's both the heroes and the villains. A lot of times you got to pick one or the other, and in most cases it becomes the hero's film. But the villains can be so good if you let them sink their teeth into it. You take Charlize Theron and you just let her have this sort of juicy, vicious role. Yeah. That's a Fast 8 I want to see. Granted, I want to see Fast 8 anyway, because I really like these films the deeper they get into the series. But a good, awesome female villain that Charlize Theron gets to be? I'm more sold than I was sold before anyway. So I hope they can make that happen. I hope they can lock her up. I hope we get Charlize Theron in a Fast 8. I just think it'd be a beautiful thing. I really do. Alright, speaking of other films that are moving forward or seemingly moving forward on the sequel front, there's been a lot of talk about Bad Boys 3 over the years. Pretty much since Bad Boys 2. Which, let me grab a date for you here, because I don't have it off the top of my head. But Bad Boys 2 seems like a really long time ago. 2003, in fact. So we're coming up on 13 years. And look, I do not like Bad Boys 2 at all. I find Bad Boys 2 to be Michael Bay excess to the max. When you look at like Michael Bay films and you're like, oh, it's just filled with excess, they don't get more excessful than Bad Boys 2. Bad Boys 2, I mean, they go and blow up Cuba and shit. It's a disaster. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to throw into that movie. A lot. And it's sort of the epitome of the Michael Bay film that I don't like. I think Bad Boys 1 is fine. Bad Boys 1 is just a fine... I mean, it's a buddy cop movie. It's on a smaller scale. It just sort of plays up the dynamic between Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. Bad Boys 2 became this much bigger thing, and it's just, I mean, it's just explosions galore. But so there's been a talk about the band getting back together, and it doesn't seem like Michael Bay is going to do it. Michael Bay is once again locked up with another Transformers film, and who knows what he wants to do beyond that. But the word that was going around was that it was going to be Joe Carnahan that was writing and directing Bad Boys 3. Now, Will Smith came out recently in an interview here in the last few days that said that they're definitely going to make a Bad Boys 3, that him and Martin Lawrence, who hadn't seen each other in a few years, saw each other and they hugged each other, and it was like, oh, we just knew in that moment that we're going to go back and do this. Now, that's not really all that concrete. You know, it's not a studio announcement saying, nope, Bad Boys 3 is happening. This is when we're shooting it. But let's not forget that Will Smith didn't really do that sort of favor for Independence Day sequels. He didn't say, we're definitely making Independence Day 2. Which he could have. And look, he's not even involved in Independence Day Resurgence. So for Will Smith to sort of go out of his way and say, no, we're making it, I think that does speak volumes about the viability of the Bad Boys series when it comes to Will Smith and Martin Lawrence. I think this is one that they are perfectly fine going back to every so often. It might just be one of those ones where, like, you just enjoy each other and they like making it. And as a result, they'll keep coming back every once in a while when things sort of settle down and it looks like they could dive back in. And it would appear that Joe Carnahan is in on this still. Because after Will Smith made those comments, Joe Carnahan took to Twitter and tweeted out sort of a previs image, I believe, of a car explosion that would be a part of Bad Boys 3. So you take all those pieces together and you'd have to look at this and say, it appears like Bad Boys 3 is all systems go. They're gonna make this happen. And I like Joe Carnahan as a filmmaker. I'm not a fan of like Smoking Aces, but Narc and The Grey I think are two fantastic films. So I'd be incredibly interested to see what Joe Carnahan could do with Bad Boys in his hands. Because I think it would, as big and explosive as Joe Carnahan can get sometimes, particularly with his style, I think that is still greatly toned down from where Michael Bay can go with films of this nature. So while I'm not a fan of Bad Boys 2, I'd give Bad Boys 3 a look if they want to bring it all back together. And it'll be interesting to see to what degree Michael Bay is going to be involved, if it's just sort of in a producer role or whatnot. Because you know Michael Bay's just not giving these things up with ease. But I would have to believe that if Joe Carnahan was getting in, he's going to write it and he's going to direct it, a lot of it is going to allow him to put his fingerprints on it and not just sort of be executing things for Michael Bay's greater vision. Everything would be consistent with the characters. I just think we're going to get sort of a different, maybe even more grounded, grittier Bad Boys film. And I know that those terms are dirty the way that they're used now, with sort of everything being grounded and grittier. I just think that a Bad Boys 3 might be a little bit, I'm not going to say more realistic, but just not so cartoonishly over the top as Bad Boys 2 was. So we'll see how that proceeds from there. All right, we did have one piece big coming in before we hit the air. I wanted to get to it, and I saved it till the very, very end. and that has to do with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. A final trailer has dropped from Warner Brothers as we head into the home stretch with the film hitting late in March, but this is going to be the last one that we're going to see, in addition to all of the TV spots we'll get along the way. But this is the last full-blown trailer that we're going to get to see, and I imagine that's because Warner Brothers wants to make sure that they have this thing in front of Deadpool this weekend in order to sort of once again crash into the comic book / superhero audience and make sure they sell them on their film. And here's the deal with Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. To this point, I have just never really gotten the sense that they have figured out how to particularly sell this movie. Do we sell it on Batman? Do we sell it on Superman? Do we sell it on the Justice League? How do we move forth with getting people to fully embrace this, considering that there is still a divisiveness that exists concerning Man of Steel and sort of the direction that this universe is taking, with that as the starting off point. And the last trailer that they cut was, it was a horrible trailer, just a horrible trailer. And that's the one that revealed Doomsday and just had this really odd tone to it. It was serious, but it was also light. It was almost too light, too comedy heavy, which seemed to be swinging the pendulum back to the other extreme from where previously it almost felt like it was too serious. This is the one that I think strikes the best tone so far, which is that it doesn't bring in all of the extra shit, all of the other bullshit that they've been trying to sort of wedge into this film and have now sort of sent fans into panic mode about how crowded this movie might be. What this trailer does is it really focuses a lot on the Batman and Superman dynamic. Them on opposite sides, them going head to head, them with two very different approaches, and them colliding. Which is what a film entitled Batman v Superman should be centered around. Look, we know at some point they're going to get together on the same team, and the Justice League is going to come together and they're going to fight common enemies, and even though they may not be best buds, they'll be able to at least work together for a common goal. But before we get there, wouldn't it be nice to sort of just hang out and dwell in the area where these two guys just hate each other? Where they just view each other as sort of menaces to society? That even though they're doing similar things, they'd rather be left to do it by themselves rather than with this other one perhaps gumming up the works or doing things in a manner or style that they don't necessarily agree with. That's what I want. At least early on. At least tease me with the fact that this may not work out well for them. At least tease me with the fact that these guys just not really capable of coming together. It's like oil and water. Work with me on that. Because if I'm just watching a movie with the idea that everything will be fine later down the road, where's the drama in the film then? Where's the tension? The tension feels fake. It feels manufactured. It feels like whatever, because inevitably we're all going to be okay. So here, in the final Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice trailer, there's much more built on when it comes to the opposition Superman poses for Batman and vice versa. There's also a much heavier look at Batman, at this particular Batman, at the Batfleck, and what Ben Affleck as Bruce Wayne, as Batman, brings to the table. What this sort of aged and grizzled veteran now is within this particular world, which I don't think we've gotten a lot of. We've gotten a lot of focusing on everything else. We haven't even gotten a lot of Superman stuff as of late. Or even as of early. We just haven't gotten a lot of Superman stuff, period. But this is the first time we've really gotten a fairly extensive look at who this particular Batman is. And I think that's one of the things that they're trying to use as a selling point, which is funny because if we go back in time, there were lots and lots of people criticizing the casting of Ben Affleck as Batman. He can't do it. I hate Ben Affleck. He fucked up Daredevil. But you look at this trailer and you look at Ben Affleck as Batman and you go, this looks pretty good. Pretty good. And Lex Luthor is taking a back seat here, which I think is a strength of the trailer in selling the film. We get an appearance of Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. But once again, it doesn't seem to be a key piece. There is no Doomsday to be seen whatsoever. Instead, this focuses once again on Batman versus Superman. That's where they've needed to be this whole time. And that's why, even though it has taken them this long to get here, I am encouraged that they have finally managed to get their heads out of their asses and embrace the idea of having these two superheroes start as enemies and allowing us to witness how that happens. So we'll see how it turns out. Granted, generic guitar riffing doesn't really do it for me. But as far as the overall tone that the trailer has, I mean, I've been hopeful of Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice for a long time. I'm not going in there hating this thing at all. I am hoping for the best. And this is coming as somebody who does not like Man of Steel whatsoever. I'm encouraged by what I continue to see out of Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. I think some of the previous looks aren't fully representative of what this film is. And I think that Zack Snyder may finally have a film that gets the DC Cinematic Universe going. So people can stop shitting all over what they're trying to do over there. Sight unseen. So I like what I got here out of the Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice trailer. Absolutely go and check it out. I think you'll be encouraged by it. And with that said, as we head towards the home stretch of Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, I think we're in a good mental place that going in, people will be optimistic rather than negative. People will be rooting for the film rather than hoping that the film proves them wrong. And that's what Warner Brothers has had working against them this whole time. And I think finally they may have been able to switch around in their favor going into the release late in March. With that said, that's it for the show this week. So I hope that you've enjoyed it, coming all the way through to the end with me. Be sure to check out all of our social media accounts. Just latch on to them because it's good for us. It's helpful. And it's helpful for you too, as we got a lot of good stuff to talk about and share with you as well. So on Twitter, make sure you follow the official Just the Worst Podcast Twitter handle at JTW Podcast. Right there, we'll always let you know when we get a brand new episode dropping. So at JTW Podcast. Also, Just the Worst Podcast, now officially an integral part of This Is Infamous. So make sure you follow the This Is Infamous Twitter handle at Tis Infamous. That's TIS Infamous. Tis Infamous. And myself as well. You can follow all my random musings and ramblings on Twitter at Infamous Kid with 2 Ds there at the end. Over on Facebook, facebook.com/Just the Worst Podcast, facebook.com/Tis Infamous, and facebook.com/Bully the Kid. Once again, all sorts of stuff going up there on a regular basis, so be sure you check a lot of that out. What else do we got for you? Oh yeah, SoundCloud.com. That's where you can always grab all the This Is Infamous podcasts, all the Just the Worst podcasts, whether it's this podcast, the movie review podcast, the wrestling podcast, the AMA podcast. All of them are there at soundcloud.com/Just the Worst Podcast. That also means if you download the SoundCloud app from Google Play or from the App Store on Apple, from iTunes, you can listen to any of the podcasts through the app. So that's the SoundCloud app, and make sure, once again, you subscribe to Just the Worst Podcast. This is Infamous.com. That is under rebuilding period right now, so pretty soon we'll have all that up. You'll be able to grab all the podcasts there as well as set up your RSS, your iTunes, your Stitcher feeds, everything that you got in order to give you some variety with how you typically get your podcasts. So just bear with us a little bit longer. We are in the process of getting things sorted out. It took a monumental overhauling in order to get us to even the point that we're at right now. So keep an eye on thisisinfamous.com, and we'll have all that stuff coming forth with you. Beyond that, look, I got an awesome Just the Worst movie review podcast coming up this week. I'll be talking Deadpool this week. That's right, Deadpool, full-blown review of Deadpool. So make sure you check out that show coming up. Also, right now, I got a video review of Deadpool that you can check out, spoiler-free, over at the This Is Infamous YouTube channel. So be sure to check that out as well. I am your host, Billy Donnelly. You can find my work all the time at JoeBlow.com, This Is Infamous, and right here at Just the Worst Podcast. I'll be back next week talking more cool stuff. And in the meantime, I'm going to be out. So this has been Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 22. Thanks for listening. Have yourself a pleasant, immediate future. Peace. Just the Worst Podcast, episode number 22, has been a presentation of Just the Worst Podcast Media.